Hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Muriel and I am the Associate Director of Student Wellness here at Lynn University. Today we are going to be discussing sleep and its importance, especially now. Sleep has many benefits, which we will talk about later, but one of the main things is health. Our health can be affected by sleep, whether it's positively or negatively, and especially in times of stress. So we're definitely going to talk about that today. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that all the slides and information come from this book, The Sleep Revolution, Transforming Your Life One Night at a Time. It is by Arianna Huffington, and she is the founder of the Huffington Post, in case you didn't know. So let's start just by talking about how much sleep you get. So if you could just think for a second, how much sleep on average do you get per night? So do you think that with that amount of sleep that is enough for you? Do you feel that you need to get more or less? So now let's think about how much sleep the average college student gets. So someone between the age of maybe 18 to 24, how many hours of sleep do you think they get? And how many do you think they need? So that answer is 7 to 9 hours. And you might be thinking, well, that is definitely not what I get. But that's the number of hours that you should all be aiming for in order to be healthy, happy, be able to get up feeling refreshed in the morning and feeling fine. So 7 to 9 hours is the hours that we should most be trying to get to. So what amount of sleep do you think Americans are getting? Do you think that they're getting what they need? Probably not. So according to this, 40% of all American adults are sleep deprived. They clock significantly less than the recommended minimum 7 hours of sleep per night. So why do you think that many Americans are sleep deprived? So there's quite a few reasons, but probably some that are coming to your mind is stress, anxiety, maybe sleep disorders. Maybe they have too much to do in the day, or so they feel, so they don't have enough time for themselves. I hear a lot of times that people have so much that they have to do in the day themselves, whether it's work or looking after their children or running errands, that at the end of the day, they just need some time for themselves. And that time at the end of the day could last from 30 minutes to 4 hours, 6 hours, and then before they know it, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they have to start their day over at 6 a.m. the next day. So maybe they feel that they have too much to do. And then going along with that, people work many hours. They work way past the amount of hours that they should be. Checking emails at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I think that we all kind of fall into that mentality of, the more work I do and the less sleep I get, the better I'm going to look. And in most cases, that is entirely not true, because if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not looking after yourself, it's going to show in your work eventually. So maybe for a few weeks you can get away with saying that, but after that, you're probably not. All right, so let's look at this map. This is a map of the world, and we're going to go through and see how much sleep different countries get. So this is actually a survey by Skift, which is a travel website. So let's go ahead and look at that. So Tokyo, the average amount of sleep that they get is 5 hours and 45 minutes. Hong Kong, they get an average of 6 hours, 29 minutes. Singapore, 6 hours, 27 minutes. Dubai, 6 hours, 13 minutes. Vegas, 6 hours, 32 minutes. So the recommended amount of sleep that college students should be getting, like I said, is 7 to 9 hours. So if people in Las Vegas are getting more hours sleep than you as a college student, then, we may have a problem. All right, so when we're talking about sleep and work, this survey, this travel website that I just mentioned, shows that more than 40% of Americans had not taken a single vacation day that year. Maybe it's because they don't have vacation days, but I think that more often than not is that people feel that they need to work to show that their worth. And like I said, not getting enough sleep or not taking enough time will eventually lead in burnout. So if you have those vacation days, you should be taking them. If you are lucky enough to get vacation days with your job, then you should take them, because it's going to give you the rest and relaxation that you need to be good at your job. Everybody needs a break sometime. So also they found that 30% of employed Americans now report getting 6 hours of sleep or less per night. So that is not good. I know some people are probably going to say, well, I can get 4 or 5 hours and I'm good. That's great if that's what you think, but I can probably guarantee that in a few years, you may that either may change, or you may see your productivity going down, because we do need more sleep than that. Okay, and 70% of Americans do describe their sleep as insufficient. And getting by on less than 6 hours of sleep is one of the biggest factors in job burnout. It's just, we just should not be doing it. We really need to look after ourselves, and sleep is one of the easiest ways, if we don't have a sleep disorder, that we can do that. All right, so the cost of sleep. So how much do you think sleep deprivation costs the US economy? Do you think it's like 1 million, 10 million, 30 million? Well, that number is actually $63 billion. Okay, so the cost of sleep leads to people being less healthy, so they take more time off work, and they are at increased risk for certain diseases, so heart attack, stroke, diabetes, obesity, and especially right now with the coronavirus, many people are recommending that, one of the best things that we can do right now, apart from, all the hygiene stuff, covering your mouth, using masks, using gloves, washing your hands, things like that, is getting enough sleep. We all need to get enough sleep in order to stay healthy. So that's something that we can easily do. We don't have to leave our house. Even losing an hour of sleep per week, which many of us probably do without a moment's thought, could lead to a higher risk of a heart attack. So this Russian study found that nearly 63% of men who suffered a heart attack also had a sleep disorder. Another cost of lost sleep is death. So the incidence of death from all causes goes up 15% when we sleep 5 hours or less per night. So we really need to take that into consideration. Our food intake. So people who get more sleep produce less of a hormone called ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So that releases increases our appetite. So we're likely to eat more if we don't get that hormone. And then our skin can also suffer. So the less sleep we have, the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles does increase by 45%. And that is very significant. And blemishes went up too, and redness as well. So our bodies, our bodies can be affected, our skin, our food intake. So there's a lot of things that come at the cost of losing sleep. So what about driving while drowsy? So have you ever had that feeling when you're driving in a car and you were really tired and you thought you might fall asleep? I'm sure many of us have felt that way. Obviously, that's extremely dangerous, but it happens to a lot of people. Maybe you're not even feeling particularly tired, but that driving can make you very sleepy. You've all heard that, a lot of babies sleep well when they're driving in a car, of course, because it's soothing to them. And us as adults, we feel like that too. So sometimes you may not realize how tired you are, and you may feel that you may fall asleep. So in our culture, especially in the workplace, going without sleep is actually considered a badge of honor. I don't know why. But the effects of sleepiness are largely the same as those of being drunk. So you wouldn't get in a car drunk, so why would you get in the car tired? Those things are highly related and can have very similar impacts. So when we get behind the wheel of a car without enough sleep, we are engaging in this behavior that's dangerous to both ourselves and others. You might think, well, I only got a couple hours sleep last night, I'll be fine to drive. But you're not only putting yourself at risk, you're putting other people on the road at risk as well. So I don't know if you've heard of the term microsleep, but it's also known as nodding off. Sometimes we can do that. But that is obviously terrifying if you're behind the wheel of a car. And unfortunately, that happens to a lot of people. So 56 million people have accidentally nodded off behind the wheel of a car, which is so scary. So drowsy drivers are involved in 328,000 accidents each year, and 64,000 of those result in death, which is horrific. So nodding off, or this micro sleep, occurs when we unknowingly fall asleep from anywhere from a few seconds to minutes. So just think about this. If you are coming home from work, you're driving down a highway, say 60 miles per hour, and at that speed, your car is traveling at 88 feet per second. If you close your eyes for just 4 seconds, your car has traveled roughly the length of a football field before you jerk yourself awake, and the consequences could be potentially deadly. So just for 4 seconds, you have roughly traveled the length of a football field before you wake up. And then a story that happened in real life: a Walmart truck on the New Jersey Turnpike slammed into a limo carrying, among others, the comedian Tracy Morgan. You may remember that from a few years ago. One of the passengers was killed, and Tracy Morgan and 2 others were seriously injured. The driver in that truck had not slept for 28 hours leading up to the crash. And this incident made headlines because it involved a celebrity, but hundreds of thousands of crashes take place each year under the media's radar, and we don't hear about them. So now, because of that, Arkansas and New Jersey have now made driving while sleep deprived a criminal offense. All right, so as we just move on to some other areas where people think that, it's a badge of honor to not get enough sleep. Definitely that happens in politics. So our political campaigns constantly feature candidates bragging about how little they sleep and the long hours that they put in. So here is an ad from a politician, Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, and he was campaigning in South Carolina. And the headline is, "A sleep-deprived Scott Walker barnstorms through South Carolina." So that's making headlines because it's looked on as a positive, but it's really not. Next, we can talk about some of our world leaders who are also not getting enough sleep. And these are the people that hold our future in their hands. You've often heard of that term, I'm sure. Would you want this person to have his or her finger on the nuclear code button? So that's a presidential cliche of many campaigns. And if somebody is so sleep deprived, they're not going to be able to make good decisions. And we certainly wouldn't want them with that finger on that button. So here are some examples. So this is the former Obama economic advisor, Larry Summers, and he appeared to be dozing during a press conference in April 2009 at the White House. Next, we have Pope Benedict XVI. He was 83 at the time, and he fell asleep during a celebration in Italy in 2010. And then we have the then British Prime Minister Gordon Brown resting his eyes during a UN Security Council meeting in New York. So I'm pretty sure that meeting was quite important. Okay, so it's not just us it happens to, it's our world leaders, because they have so much stress, like many of us, but their stress is heightened because of the roles that they play, and they're definitely not getting enough sleep, which can lead to very dangerous things. So next, we're going to talk about sleeping pills. I'm sure you've seen commercials for these sleeping pills all the time. So in 2004, I know it was a while ago, but people spent around the world a staggering $58 billion on sleep aid products. That is a shocking amount to be spending on these products. These drugs are usually the only alternative offered to millions of people who have trouble sleeping. So if you go to the doctor and you say, I've been having trouble sleeping for the last few nights, many times they will just write you a prescription for medication rather than talking about different ways that you could probably get to sleep naturally. So that is why we're spending so much on these sleep aid products. So as I'm sure you're aware, these sleeping pills have various side effects, albeit rarely, but they can have significant consequences. Things like sleep eating, sleep walking, and no memory of what to do while taking the medication, which is really scary. So a good example that I can give to you, the Today Show, Julia Summerfield was a regular user of Ambien until what she described as her wake-up call. So her credit card company had called her to report suspicious activity on her account. So it was charged nearly $3,000 to the store Anthropologie at 2 a.m. She first thought that probably it was fraud, but she was quickly disproven when she found an e-receipt at the top of her inbox that she had actually spent that money. She had had an Ambien-induced online shopping spree. So that might sound like kind of funny, but there are many other things that she could do while on this sleeping pill that could have potentially really bad outcomes. So something else did happen to her. She had realized that she had consumed large quantities of brown sugar straight from the bag. She devoured 2 of her son's decorated Easter eggs and written an embarrassing email to her boss. But what finally got her to kick the hypnotic habit was her husband said to her about their toddler son, how can you be sure that you would never hurt Jude, her son? He said, what if you decided to put him in the car? And unfortunately, those things have actually happened. So we have another case, this woman, Lindsay, she used the defense of Ambien in a defense in a criminal trial. So returning from a business trip, she was exhausted. She took 1 dose of generic Ambien. And several hours later, when she emerged from her zombie state, she was in police custody. She had got out of bed, filled her bathtub, and left the water running. She'd taken her dog out, climbed into a car, and while driving had collided with another car. She failed a sobriety test after falling 3 times when asked to walk in a straight line. The police charged her with driving under the influence. After her lawyer pointed to the warning label of Ambien, all charges were dropped, although she was left with a suspended license and nearly $10,000 in lawyer's fees. So like I said earlier, these things do happen rarely, but when they do happen, they can have very serious consequences. All right, so this is actually taken from the warning label or disclaimer of Ambien. So after taking Ambien, you might get up out of bed while not being fully awake and do an activity that you do not know what you're doing. The next morning, you may not remember anything you did during the night. Reported activities include driving a car, which is called sleep driving, making and eating food, talking on the phone, having sex, sleepwalking, etc. Right? So that's kind of scary, and that they tell you that information up front. All right, so in 2009, a woman called Julie Ann Bronson, she was a flight attendant based in Texas, and she had took Ambien after drinking wine earlier in the day. When she woke up, she was in jail in her pajamas, and to her horror, she learned that she had gotten behind the wheel of a car and run over 3 people. One of them was an 18-month-old baby who did survive but suffered severe brain damage. So she could have gotten 10 years behind bars for that, but the fact that she was on Ambien reduced her sentence to 6 months with 10 years probation. And that is hard in itself, but imagine realizing that you hurt 3 people, and particularly a baby. I don't think you would ever get over that. Despite the fact that she had violated the warning not to drink while taking the drug. So on the Ambien label, it does say don't drink alcohol and take this, but I guess she thought it was fine because it was earlier in the day. I don't know how earlier it was, but both have serious consequences. So this is another common sleep aid. It's called Lunesta, and this is their warning label. So the morning after you take Lunesta, your ability to drive safely and think clearly may be decreased. Lunesta may cause serious side effects that you may not know are happening to you, include daytime sleepiness, not thinking clearly, acting strangely, confused or upset, walking, eating, driving, or engaging in other activities while asleep. Other abnormal behaviors include aggressiveness, agitation, hallucinations, and confusion. In depressed patients, worsening of depression, including risk of suicide, may occur. And one of the most concerning things here is you may not know what is happening to you, which is so scary. You are not in control of your actions, your body, nothing. All right, so in 20 years, people will probably look back at these sleeping pills and how we look back on the acceptance of cigarette smoking. All right. Years ago, people thought it was fine to smoke cigarettes. Nothing was going to happen to you. But according to Jerome Siegel, the director of UCLA's Center for Sleep Research, he feels that in 20 years, we're going to look back. People will look back on the sleeping pill era and be like, how did people take that? Why? They knew it was dangerous. Why were they doing it to themselves? Okay. So I'm not telling you these things so that you don't take these sleeping aids, but I'm simply warning you about all of the dangers. Like I said earlier, many doctors will prescribe these medications when sleeping is discussed. So maybe if that is an issue for you, maybe you talk about other solutions first and then look back onto medication as like the last option. So when we were young, we had nap time, we had recess, we had lunch breaks, and as we got older, nap time was omitted, unfortunately, and recess soon followed suit. So, a time dedicated to eating lunch was also taken from us as we entered college, because we hardly have time to breathe, let alone sleep or relax. So when has sleep something that is so crucial to us, that it was incorporated into our actual school days when we were younger, how has that now become such a luxury that many people will sacrifice it? As a social norm, we simply don't emphasize the need for sleep. Fun is focused around late night activities, studying reaches its epitome with pulling all-nighters, and people from around the world flock to the city that never sleeps. So the bottom line here is we do have time to sleep, we just choose not to. So really think about the things that you can maybe eliminate. Do you really need to, binge watch all of those episodes on Netflix? Maybe you break it up. Maybe you do 2 tonight and 2 tomorrow. They're still going to be here when you wake up tomorrow. So just think about the things that are important and how you feel when you wake up, because a lot of people, when they don't sleep well, they don't feel good. They feel restless. They need to take a nap, which can cause drowsiness, and then that can lead to not sleeping well at nighttime. So when forced to choose, I will not trade a single night's sleep for a chance of extra profit. So that is from millionaire Warren Buffett. So just something to think of. And for those of you who don't know him, he's considered one of the most successful investors in the world and has a net worth of $82 billion. So he's a billionaire as of 2019. So he is the 3rd wealthiest person in the world, and he will not trade a good night's sleep over anything. So please remember that. All right, so sleep is crucial to our survival. So the drive to sleep is so strong that it will supersede the drive to eat. Your brain will just go to sleep despite all your conscious efforts to keep it at bay. So you can see here on Maslow's hierarchy of needs that sleep is right at in this physiological needs with air, water, food, shelter, clothing, and reproduction. It is right there. So it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Okay. All right, so sleep is essentially like bringing in an overnight cleaning crew to clear the toxic waste and proteins that accumulate between brain cells during the day. So the lack of sleep can lead to irreversible loss of brain cells. And so the less we sleep as we grow older, the faster our brains age. All right, so we don't want that. So make sure you are getting your sleep. All right, so have you ever heard of that term, if sleep on it? I'm sure most of you had. And usually maybe you got a difficult decision to make and you think, or someone says, you just sleep on it. And then when you wake up in the morning, because you have slept, you have rested, you may be able to make a decision better. So sleep almost doubles our chances of remembering previously unrecalled material. So if you have a big test tomorrow and you're like, well, I'm going to pull an all-nighter, I'm going to study all night, I'm going to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning and my exam's at 8 and study, you're better off actually going to bed and sleeping and maybe waking up a little bit earlier, because brain-deprived students will not do well on tests, okay? So next time you feel that you need to pull an all-nighter to cram for an exam, remember you'd be better off just going to bed. All right, so how much sleep is enough? So on this chart, we have newborns, so 0 to 3 months, they need 14 to 17 hours. It's a lot of hours they need. As they get a little bit older, 12 to 15 hours. Toddlers, 1 to 2 years, so 11 to 14. Preschoolers, 10 to 13. School-age children, 9 to 11 hours. Teenagers, 8 to 10. Young adults, 7 to 9. Adults, 24 to 64, 7 to 9, and then older adults 65 plus, 7 to 8. So always make sure that you're getting within the recommended amount of sleep, okay? So one of the ways to promote healthy sleep habits is by changing the way we talk about sleep. So often with children, we give it to them as a punishment. So if you don't eat your food, you're going straight to bed. Children are taught early that sleep is something to avoid as long as possible. And then when you become an adult, you're like, oh, I wish I could do that again. So a minimum of 7 hours sleep is really essential. And I'm sure that you all know, like I said, people who say they can get by on a minimum amount of sleep, but realistically, can they? All right, so next we are going to watch a brief video. This is called The Effects of Sleep Deprivation.
In 1965, 17-year-old high school student Randy Garner stayed awake for 264 hours. That's 11 days to see how he'd cope without sleep. On the second day, his eyes stopped focusing. Next, he lost the ability to identify objects by touch. By day 3, Garner was moody and uncoordinated. At the end of the experiment, he was struggling to concentrate, had trouble with short-term memory, became paranoid, and started hallucinating. Although Garner recovered without long-term psychological or physical damage, for others, losing shut-eye can result in hormonal imbalance, illness, and in extreme cases, death. We're only beginning to understand why we sleep to begin with, but we do know it's essential. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and adolescents need about 10. We grow sleepy due to signals from our body telling our brain we are tired, and signals from the environment telling us it's dark outside. The rise in sleep-inducing chemicals like adenosine and melatonin send us into a light doze that grows deeper, making our breathing and heart rate slow down and our muscles relax. This non-REM sleep is when DNA is repaired and our bodies replenish themselves for the day ahead. In the United States, it's estimated that 30% of adults and 66% of adolescents are regularly sleep deprived. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. Staying awake can cause serious bodily harm. When we lose sleep, learning, memory, mood, and reaction time are affected. Sleeplessness may also cause inflammation, hallucinations, high blood pressure, and it's even been linked to diabetes and obesity. In 2014, a devoted soccer fan died after staying awake for 48 hours to watch the World Cup. While his untimely death was due to a stroke, studies show that chronically sleeping fewer than 6 hours at night increases stroke risk by 4.5 times compared to those getting a consistent 7 to 8 hours of shut-eye. For a handful of people on the planet who carry a rare inherited genetic mutation, sleeplessness is a daily reality. This condition, known as fatal familial insomnia, places the body in a nightmarish state of wakefulness, forbidding it from entering the sanctuary of sleep. Within months or years, this progressively worsening condition leads to dementia and death. How can sleep deprivation cause such immense suffering? Scientists think the answer lies with the accumulation of waste products in the brain. During our waking hours, our cells are busy using up our day's energy sources, which get broken down into various byproducts, including adenosine. As adenosine builds up, it increases the urge to sleep, also known as sleep pressure. In fact, caffeine works by blocking adenosine's receptor pathways. Other waste products also build up in the brain, and if they're not cleared away, they collectively overload the brain and are thought to lead to the many negative symptoms of sleep deprivation. So, what's happening in our brain when we sleep to prevent this? Scientists found something called the glymphatic system. a cleanup mechanism that removes this buildup and is much more active when we're asleep. It works by using cerebrospinal fluid to flush away toxic byproducts that accumulate between cells. Lymphatic vessels, which serve as pathways for immune cells, have recently been discovered in the brain, and they may also play a role in clearing out the brain's daily waste products. While scientists continue exploring the restorative mechanisms behind sleep, we can be sure that slipping into slumber is a necessity if we want to maintain our health and our sanity.